today. Thank you so much, everybody. This is the third session of the JWF's Media and Journalism webinars for Arbana and Arif. We have been having wonderful discussions with world-renowned journalists, media members from different parts of the world. And this is our third gathering, as mentioned. And today's topic is reporting from conflict and war zones. We're going to speak about the challenges and opportunities. We'll post you various questions, but thankfully we have a very vibrant, active audience in the room, young journalists. Some are already in their career paths building up. We also do have media and communications journalism students as well. So please, everybody, start posting your comments, questions as we dive into the discussion. And with a great pleasure, I'll be hosting Arbana and Arif today. So Arbana is an Albanian investigative journalist from Kosovo, an expert on Islamic radicalization, the rise of Islamic State ideology in Western countries, majorly her focus areas. And she's also featured on a variety of television networks as an expert on these topics. And she has been very active in raising a voice on freedom of speech and women's rights in the Middle East, Central Europe, and Balkans. Coming to Arif, he's a well-known journalist reporting from East Africa, focusing on Sudan, particularly South Sudan. And after the Sudanese government's crackdown on independent media in 2008, he and other journalists as well had to create a network, a Sudanese journalists network, to campaign against this systemic state-led violence and violations. So he has reported from various countries to Ethiopia, Eritrea, Kenya, and Uganda. And back in 2014, he was a Sudanese Youth Leader Fellow at the United States Institute of Peace. Thank you so much to both of you for spending your morning, afternoon with us. So would like to start with couple highlights on the topic today. So in the international human rights law, which really backs to the end of Second World War in the Geneva Conventions, international human rights law defines conflict as an armed violence, either within state authorities or integral violent groups in a country or between different sovereign states. But really, in our day, with the rise of authoritarian trends, extremely polarized societies, peace really no longer means absence of war. We definitely need more than that. We need positive peace to exist. And we report, monitor on various systemic state-led atrocity crimes taking place in countries where we don't actually see armed forces in the street, but governments are indeed the perpetrators. And recently I came across a very interesting data. So in 2023, 8 out of 10 people, very interesting and quite worrisome, 8 out of 10 people are living with less freedoms than they used to have due to the wave of backsliding from democracies, as there's an oppressive trend limiting our fundamental human rights. And I'm pretty sure many of you have been following UNHCR's recently released data as well. 108 million people are forcibly displaced due to armed conflicts, persecutions, violence, climate crisis, and we'll be speaking on these more in the upcoming minutes as well. So starting with Arbana, countries in the Balkans regions are unfortunately listed as the least peaceful states within various conflicts. And after the dissolution of Yugoslavia, surely many countries received their independence fairly new, back to 3 decades ago. We witnessed an ethnic cleansing, genocide in Bosnia. So I would love if you can reflect on these, but as a startup question, that would be great if you can tell us more about your journalism career. How did you start off? You were the editor-in-chief of a daily newspaper, Zeri, and to this day, you still continue your journalism reporting, particularly on these topics, foreign religious extremists, their ties, their transnational crimes on the local authorities, limiting non-governmental organizations. So please, I would love to hear more about your journey, and do please tell us about your award, the one that you received back in 2015, Women of Courage Award, that you were given, presented by the US State Department.
Thank you, Cemre. Thank you, Mehmet. And I'm honored to be here today with you virtually and seeing all the list of participants coming from all across the world. And in each country, no matter where, in Western countries, Africa, Middle East, we all share the same problems. I don't know how many of you know about Kosovo. We've been in war during the 1999, so genocide happened in my country. Genocide from Serbia, which is the closest ally of Russia. And I was 16, 17 during the war that I experienced, and I have seen what happened back in my country. When we left to Albania, in our neighbor country, I could speak a few words in English, and I've been talking to journalists in the border, and I have realized at that age, at that moment, the importance of journalism, the importance of our mission, what you carry as a journalist. And then after the war, even though I was still in the high school, in 2001, I moved to capital city and I start the college for journalism and start working very young. And the country that was for many decades under the Serbian regime, we were all hoping for freedom. And as I said, experiencing the war and the fear. We were 3 sisters, and during the war praying that we've been killed by bullet and not being massacred. Then you can imagine the trauma of at that age. And then all the willingness to work as a journalist for your own country. Now we are free. Now we have to build our new institution. We'd never think what might happen to our country. And now I'm talking more than 2 decades since that period of time, and I grew up being journalist. My son is now an age of my age when I start working as a journalist. He's 18, and when I make a comparison and tell them what we've been through, so I can see many young journalists today with hear us, and I just want to share shortly, not take much of your time. So I started as a journalist on the largest newspaper. In the beginning, I was writing about corruption. When you have a new country, building new institution, everyone, locals, internationals, they are corrupted because they misuse the budget that is coming from the abroad, the aid and everywhere. So I started writing a lot on corruption cases, but for 10 years in a row, I've been receiving threats. And at that time, not much on social media because we didn't have, but there were different ways of receiving pressure from outside, from politicians. But Kosovo is majority Muslims, but not everyone practice. With constitution is secular state. And no one was paying attention as what is happening in this country that came up from war. We had Saudi Arabia in the beginning. They came with this charity organization offering free English and computer courses to kids and asking them in return to learn about the religion. And I have seen in my eyes that something is changing, and I've decided to start investigating the rise of extremism groups and this new Islam that was brought into our country. I start talking with imams, and I'm to this day very thankful to them because they helped me doing research and realizing what is happening. And I did not conduct this investigating piece only in my country. I went to neighbor countries. I went to London when I find out that the money is coming from Pakistan organization based in London to brainwash kids. So, but I underestimated, and I never thought what might happen when you start writing or talking about religion. You can be misunderstood. And when you write about corruption, you have a certain group or an individual that you write about. When you write about religion, you become an enemy of the mass of people, like large community, and you never know who you are dealing with. And with social media and all the propaganda, it is very difficult. And I can give you a few details of also being journalist in a patriarchal society, how hard it is as a woman. And I was a young mother, and I want to tell you, like, what I've did at the time I will never do today. I took my son, which was 7 years old at the time, and I went to interview a guy who was suspected to be a part of Al Qaeda, because I thought that seeing me as a mother, it might be easier to get an interview to this radical person. So I wanted to bring the truth, because, as I said, experiencing war, it's more than just being a journalist. And as you mentioned, after many years of writing, raising, not just writing, I became a public speaker, trying to convince people that there are major powers that are using us for their agenda, from Saudis, then with Turkey, then with Erdogan, with this ruthless dictator. And I was chasing their money. So going after money of the religious leaders, it's more dangerous than going after money of some businesses that are linked with the government. Then my face became, they start all the propaganda against me and threats. And in 2015, I received this award as a woman of courage from State Department. So this award is given only to women from all across the world. And the propaganda started that you are paid from Americans to, in none of my articles, because I have many articles there, I've never talked about or written about religion. I've written about extremist groups, about corrupted imams who were using religion for their own personal agenda. In 2017, actually in 2013-14, I find out all the links of the network of ISIS, Islamic State recruiting, because Kosovo, even though not 2 million people, 300 men and women joined Islamic State. So I have exposed their financial link, a network who was recruiting them. And I had two small kids. In 2018, my older son was 13 and my youngest son was 8. Like, you can imagine how young they were since I started writing about all these issues. I might sound very selfish, but I've never stopped. And I knew the risk, but I didn't know how far they might go. In 2017, they find out where I live. It's not hard in the small countries to find out where you live. And they draw the red cross next to my apartment. There was a sign, there was a message. Police came to investigate. What police told me was that they are trying to scare you, but don't be afraid, because if they want to do something to you, they would not bother just coming and drawing this red cross. And then I received a photo of a killed person, all from ISIS, and they said to me, "We know how much you love your own children. We're going to find you." 2 or 3 weeks later, I was in the TV talking about Erdogan, the Turkish president, how he's bringing money not through banks, how he's building mosques for his own political agenda, how he's replacing Albanian imams, liberal imams, with radical imams from Turkey. And at that night, on my way back home at my parking garage, I was brutally attacked. And as I said, I have underestimated all this until the attack happened. Again, I would never, never, never leave my country if there was not my little kids. I came for a month and I went back again in my country, and I have realized that we do not have support. We are not safe. I have realized that I've been working for over 17 years as a journalist, and we were not safe because I've been going to courts. There were groups that sued me. I was threatened, hundreds and thousands of threats online. But when the attack happened and they continue mentioning my kids, this was the reason then I decided to leave. And as you mentioned, even though I came here as a mom, a single mom with 2 kids, it was not easy, because people might say that, yes, you are in the United States. Yes, we are safe. but there are many other struggles that you have, not having your family, being in different country, and you are not an American, you do not have privileges, and the whole process, it's not easy, but I still do raise my voice, and I still do write, and I'm trying, because it's hard working my entire life as a journalist, because there are many others, they come here and they quit because it's hard to survive as a journalist.
Surely.
But yeah, this is pretty much what I've been done, and I later, whoever has any question, I can get into more details about writings and investigative pieces.
Sure. Thank you so much, Arbana, for your initial response. We already started getting questions, and I'm pretty sure more will be coming along for you and Arif as well. Well, you touched upon quite many important points, and really the role of media and independent, credible flow of information to keep citizens as aware, as cautious as possible, particularly during the times of building nations from scratch or transitional justice periods. We definitely must have international investigative operations, or somehow like brave journalists still covering their homeland countries from abroad. This is really a responsibility falling on our shoulders as human rights defenders, as journalists, media members, to continue this important work. And just like you said, I mean, countering violent extremism, it definitely walks through challenging, twisted cultural and religious norms, and it really takes brave actions to go against these, to expose state-led crimes during the times of conflict and irregularities. And just like you said, defamation campaigns is the #1 state actions to go. Sometimes it's over your motherhood, sometimes it's over your gender, or sometimes it's over your family that you receive these sorts of threats. So thank you so much for sharing these initial responses, and I'll get back to you with more questions. But now over to Mehmet and Arif.
Thank you so much, Cemre, and Arbana, thank you so much for sharing your journalism experience with us. I think that's really touching. That really touched my, my feelings and everything, emotions as well. I would like to start off my questions. As we are based in the US, and today is 4th of July, the Independence Day. And in the US, we say freedom is not free. And journalism profession and journalists are not free. And they face multiple threats from political players. It could be governments, religious groups, as Arbana said, or terrorists. So I think it's important that we stand in solidarity with journalists, human rights defenders, to make sure that our democratic principles, human rights, are protected and respected. Now, coming back to our second speaker, I would like to thank Arif Elsaui for joining us today. And we also would like to learn about his journalism path. And we know that, Arif, that you are located in Kenya, but still leading an important work to bring global awareness to the Sudanese internal conflict. Could you please tell us about the recent conflicts in the region? And that would be great to inform our participants about the Sudanese journalist network that you created in partnership with other colleagues, empowering journalists working in conflict zone. And at the same time, you have the Fact Center for journalists as well. So the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you so much for having me. It's my honor to participate in this conversation. And I think it's very important to all the journalists around the world to learn from each other, because the challenge is facing journalism now, facing journalists everywhere in the world. I think part of it is lack of collaboration and sharing the information and knowledge and experience, because at some point we share mostly the same challenge everywhere. Mine is it's just started a long time ago when I was a student at the university. I lived my entire life under authoritarian regime, aggressive and authoritarian regime, actually. I grew up in that regime, and as many of you know that Sudan was under authoritarian regime for almost 30 decades until 2019, when a massive demonstration put the president for 30 years down. Now we face a new era in Sudan, which is everyone was hoping to lead to a democratic regime, replacing the authoritarians and every that. But let me just go back and give you a bit of my backstory, what brought me to journalism. When I was a student in the university, actually I was very surprised at how so many people developing idea about the country, the identity, about the people, but actually they don't have that access to information to make that analysis very solid. And I was living in a very big city, but actually my area is very surrounded by security forces and the guard from the regimes. And the most important thing that clicked my brain that time is how the government is intentionally trying to control the narrative of what is going in the country. Sudan is a big, huge country, actually. It's a neighbor of that time before the separation of South Sudan, with almost 8 countries, the neighbors, and we would live far from each other without access to roads, and communications, of course, were very poor at the time. So whatever has happened in one city, you can't be 100% sure that is shared by every citizen in the country, especially the government. They need to tell the citizen what is very specific narrative of what is going on. But I think I was a bit lucky that time when I was graduating from the university. There is a small window for peace in the country, that a negotiation between 2 parties that have been fighting for a long time, which is South Sudanese SPLA, is opposition based in South Sudan, have been fighting since the independence of the country, trying to make the case of marginalizations in the country between the North and the South. But 2001 initiative came from a regional bloc called IGAD to bring the 2 parties to the peace talk, the negotiation. And this is exactly the moment where I entered the journalism. I was working with a newspaper in Sudan, and then they sent me to cover the peace talk in Kenya. I was living in Sudan at the time. And they sent me to Kenya to cover the peace talk, the negotiation between the government of Sudan and the South Sudanese rebels at the time. And that was the turning point in my professional, because I came with a very specific idea about what is going on in Sudan. That is, for a long time, the government media, the government institutions trying to convince every citizen in the country this war is just to defend the state from the rebels, but we don't know what was going on in the other side of Sudan, South Sudan. We haven't witnessed. We don't have the media. They have the resources to cross the lines and to go to cover and to witness what exactly is going on in the other side. So the war is like the imaginary idea. Like, yes, we have it in our brain, but we don't have actual information about what is going on in the ground. And I think as a journalist now with almost 21 years working in Sudan and in the region, I understood now more than ever before that we can't do our job based on that just a theoretical idea. Just we need to find a way to access the information, to witness the information, and to bring the people the truth as it is. because without the truth, without the facts about the situation, actually we can't get analysis of what is happening there. But the negotiation is open for me, the opportunity, because so many stakeholders came to the table to share and to talk about the problem that is facing the country for decades. What is it? What about it? And what is the situation in the other side? And also to get a chance to meet the opposition from the other side that we never met as when I was practicing journalist. I guess we talk over the phones and get the statements, but the reality is a bit far from what we have been hearing about the situation there. It more was. There's so many terrible things happen there. We couldn't cover it because we don't have an idea about it. And very few international media with resources, they got access to go to the other side and to make some reports, so that for the international communities and international organizations to get attention to what is going on in Sudan. But the negotiation here, as I said, open opportunity to have more information and more to get close to the reality in the ground, what is happening there. So I covered the negotiation, and that led to a peace agreement between the South Sudan in the north and the government in the north, and started a transition government for 6 years under a very specific constitution. But so the challenge was that after a few months, the government, they couldn't just manage to let everything go for free, like especially to give up the control they used to have on the media. That is not going to happen. That is especially the authoritarian regimes always what the common things we know about it is just very weak and very scared from the truth. And I think the most dangerous threatening the authoritarian regime is the media. And we have the national security one day in a public speech who said, like, the first or the biggest threat to the national security in the country is the media. If the information, especially when the internet became very accessible to so many people in Sudan, that when the government start getting worried about that. What they did is in 2008, they established a massive censorship operation for the newspapers, 2 officers. This is a direct censorship. I haven't seen something like this. I haven't even heard like this is happening in other countries. I think other countries, which is like, if you may say China or Russia or any authoritarian regime in the world, they have the resource to do the censorship in a very smart way. But in Sudan, with less resources, they have been very aggressive. For the newspaper, they will send 2 officers from the national security every night before we send the paper to the print. The officers, they will go through everything written in the newspapers, and then they will mark it with the red pen or whatever the marks, colors. When we send these papers to the print, they have to redact everything that has been highlighted by the national security. So it was very uncomfortable to see what you have discovered, what you have reported, what you have written in the newspaper is not in the newspaper in the morning. It's totally different narrative. And this is something that has been going for almost a year after they signed the peace agreement and even under the new constitutions. So the government do the actions intentionally, which is, again, is the constitution written by themselves, by the government itself. So, and then as a journalist, we gather and to try to figure out how to deal with this situation, because it's unacceptable for any journalist, I think, professional journalists in the world, to work under this kind of censorship, like someone literally censoring your work and write something opposite what you have discovered. So we just gathered very few journalists in a room, and we talk about it openly, like what can we do about it? We can't stand to the government. We can say no, but The problem we had that time, there is a different interest between the publishers and between the journalists. So as a journalist, I need just to tell the truth. But the publishers, they have a different concern. They look at this in
I'm sorry to interrupt. We will continue with other questions. And if you can wrap this part of the question, like maybe in 1 or 2 minutes, we will go into other questions. Okay, sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah, it's okay. I'm just giving you this background just to, because I think it's explaining the current situation that we have now in the country. It's not like just we woke up in Sudan and then we found the war between the two. So it's already started from the censorship. It started from misinformation, and it started from also, as a journalist, I have seen so many individuals, so many institutions made decisions based on false informations or unconfirmed informations or unsure informations. And that is a disaster, because when you don't have the information to make a decision, whether you are an individual or you're an institution or you are a leader of a country or a leader of organization, I think most likely we get wrong decisions. But if you are a leader, the decision has a huge impact on the citizens and the people. And I have been witnessing this a lot. So that's why it became for me, the journalism is something journalists need to take sometimes risk to find the truth. It's not just the truth will come to you, or the truth is just what you feel or what you think. That sometimes doesn't matter a lot. What matter is what the fact is, and how to verify these facts, and how to have the ability and the skills to do your work even within the war. I have been working the entire career, under the conflicts. There is a conflict somewhere in Darfur, and then before that was in South Sudan, and now we have the war. But this one, it was than I have ever seen something like this before in the country. This is a massive war. This is the capital of the country. And when the current situation, when the current war is started, everyone knows this between the between the army, official army, and the rapid support forces, RSF. But in the second week, we have witnessed another scales of the war. Now we have seen civilians engaging in the war. We have seen two parties like to try to encourage and to mobilize the civilians. The war. We have seen a small conflicts in different towns and cities, like especially in Darfur now in the western region of Sudan, which is just between the communities themselves. So what I'm afraid of, the narrative that we started the war with is not going to stand for a long time. It's not going to be the war in 2 weeks between the RSF and the SAF. It's going to be between different communities against each other. Some of them motivated by the fear and the scare from the others because they don't know what the others planning to do to them. We have seen entire city was locked down, and for 2 weeks we don't know what is really going on inside the cities. The network was off, the internet were off, nobody getting in, nobody getting out. And that, for the journalists, I think is so difficult to get the reality from the cities like this one. But also we have seen like the withdrawal of the international aid organization.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Thank you so much for, sharing this whole, the recent conflict that happened in Sudan. Now, I will give it to my colleague, Jemre, because she has additional questions about covering conflict-driven regions. I think, we will continue, your second part of the story with Jemre, okay? Sorry to cut you off, but, we have limited time. So Jemre, it's over to you.
Thank you so much, Arif, for your responses. And you touched upon many, many important points. You said, first of all, learning from each other as journalists, sharing expertise, experiences is making a great difference. So that was very a strong start off. And I definitely agree with you, controlling the narrative, public narrative, and the media is among the strongest tools that authoritarian leaders are embracing to disseminate their political and either political or religious agenda behind the door. So that was a great takeaway. And you also stopped at a great point, though, challenges between the priorities of journalists and publishers. I will definitely get back to you on that. But next question is coming to both of you, Arbana and Arif. So you both covered your homeland countries from internal settings as well as being a journalist in exile abroad. So that'd be great. You both covered some of the challenges that you encountered while reporting on these sensitive issues, these conflict-related issues. But what are some opportunities? Could you please reflect from your journalism experience too? How do you filter the incoming flow of information? Because in the times of crisis, we do know that both misinformation and disinformation is very fast to disseminate within society. So let's start with Arbana, you first. And I know you've been sharing your experience both from internal and external, but any tips or strategic strategies that you would like to share with the professionals in the room? How do you filter the information coming to you and some of the opportunities that you had while covering conflicts zones from abroad?
So if I can mention the advantages and disadvantages of reporting from my country and outside. So it's when you do investigative piece, it's different when you work on field. Now I can talk from United States, but it's different when you write from your own country. So you have, it's many of the articles, and especially investigative piece, you have to meet with a lot of people. They might give you information of the record. So in my first investigative piece on religion, I did over 80 interviews, and I couldn't, of course, use all of them. So, but it's also, let me just mention this very important thing. Being a local journalist, reporting, for example, from Kosovo, mentioning my country, and coming and New York Times journalist reporting from the same topic from Kosovo is different. So the way locals approach to us, it's to some points of it's easier, but as a woman journalist, the way you get information. Also, where are you going to publish that article? When I published my investigative piece in international media, they didn't take into consideration my informations from security sources within the institute. So they said these agents might have this information. For example, specific agents that they were working on field, they gave me numbers of how many radicals they are, where they are operating. But I couldn't use that because it was not a public, it was not confirmed. They might, or these police, they might just gather the information. But I remember when I was talking with the editor from London, and I was like, why I cannot use this? I went to the intelligence office, and the intelligence officer were working on field, and he said, no, because this might not be true. And if we are getting sued. So what I'm trying to say, when you do some sensitive topics for international audience, is very difficult because you need proofs. And to get proofs, you need more detailed information. You need facts. You might know that someone is corrupted, but how are you going to prove that when there are no papers? So it takes a lot of work and reliable sources. If I know someone for 100% that he's giving me I need proofs as an investigative journalist. So as you've mentioned, a lot of disadvantages to talk or write about a certain country when you are not there, especially in my field, when I talk about the radicalization of corruption. Like I have met with parents of a radicalized young girl that went into ISIS, but I had to talk to her from the camps in Syria and Iraq. So a lot of disadvantages from reporting outside our country, but a lot of problems, as we've mentioned before. So you have a lot of problems when you are local. You are affected from, I was journalist, I was also editor-in-chief, but I have problems from the owner of the newspaper. He came one day and he said to me, all this investigative piece, and you have to get money to pay salaries for the journalists, because you are talking about these businesses that are linked to politicians, or talking about the politicians that are linked. We are not going to have advertisement. How we are going to get money to pay journalists? So all this censorship. It is very hard to survive as independent media when you do not have financial support. Also, when you want to conduct an investigative piece, you need funds from outsources. You need funds from international organizations. You are not capable of doing a major investigative piece just as a local journalist. No one will support you. You are not safe. You do not have financial capability to travel and cover your expenses. So local journalists suffer more than when a correspondent from like a Western country that comes, that have everything paid, he's saved. For example, as an American journalist, me as a local, I have provided them with information, but it was much easier for them to write or also report from Turkey, for example. You know, the Turkish journalist cannot report what the New York Times or Washington journalist who is based in Turkey reporting right now. So these are pretty much advantages and disadvantages of reporting internally and externally.
Thank you so much, Arbana. And I think from this question, the biggest takeaway is the accountability that you reflected on. You have critical responsibility to be sure that what you write is aside of your own expert analysis, what you put out there as resources, because many people will cite you. Many researchers or other people will use the information that you disseminate.
Exactly. It's also our credibility. But let me mention just my case. When I was writing about this businessman who was supporting political party that came into power. When this political party came into power, they paid back this business by giving 60 million public money tenders with one source offer. So I had all the papers. I was not basing my article on anonymous sources, papers, documents, proofs. And again, that business person sued me, asking from me $700,000 because after my article, he was having problems with his business. What happened in my case? In my country, if someone sues a journalist or you sue someone, you have to wait probably months and years to be invited in the court. In my case, they invited me in 5 days. And then you just think about it. You have all the facts and everything. But what if the judge is corrupted? Because they have everything under their hands. So you are not safe, even if you prove what you are writing. And then in my case, the Reporters Without Borders, they reacted, they sent a letter and they said, keep an eye to this case, because this is not just a journalist and a businessman. This is political-ish. For years and years, I've been winning my case in specific court, and they've been going in other court against me. So this is all the pressure. Then other journalists, when they see me, what I've been going through, and it's hard for them then to go into all this. And just keep in mind the very small salaries, they are not safe, and they struggle with all these problems and safety issues. Not adding, then I can answer some of the question of all the threats and verbal targets and other things. So
we have great questions coming from audience about the mental health and some of the other form of challenges. So let's keep a little while for that. I would love our audience to pose their questions too. But just like you said, sometimes conflicts arise from economic priorities as well, and the rule of law being under government's oppression. So Arif, we've been talking about this accountability that journalists do have to follow up some filters, responsibility to disseminate accountable, transparent, independent information. And you cover war zone. You mentioned that you've been actively involved in monitoring peace negotiations. So particularly, I would love if you can reflect on this. Victims sharing their information or atrocity crimes. How do you filter those sort of information? Because as you receive loads of analysis from war zones, conflict zones, people sometimes are under sensitive conditions and unintentionally, without any bad agendas or twisted priorities, they do subjugate what information they provide. So what sort of filters you have in your profession to evaluate the information coming through your channels, and how you work around those to write your own reports?
I mean, like, of course,
Yes,
talking
please.
to trust on the I'm not sure you can hear me.
Yes, I do hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. So as I said, like, I just the way how to end the trust between you and the people to talk to you freely and to share with you the story. That's one part. And but the other part is what are you going to do with this information, especially if you live under authoritarian regime, threatening your life, and even threatening the source who is speaking to you. So you have two layers of security. You need to be careful about yourself. Of course, I was not very careful when I was a young journalist. I learned so much. It's like this: your safety of your life is the most important things. This is the advice that I need to give to any journalist. Like, you don't need to risk your life, and you need to be careful that your safety is very important. And this is something you have to understand it. Of course, when you are young and you have all the motivation to report and to get your story back out, maybe you are not paying attention to your own security. And also, if you live in the conflict zone or in the countries like nobody paying attention to it, like the international communities and others, of course, you are probably alone in this. So you can't get the help quickly as you're supposed to get. There is no emergency plan. There is no insurance if anything happens. The media houses in poor countries, of course, they don't have the resource to defend or stand by you. So this is something you have to learn it as you're going. But if you have someone who went through this one and he share with you the tips and advice, how to be careful and to be smart in the same time, and to get the story. I think the key in this one is to end the trust that you are honest journalist. You always reporting the truth. You are not in hurry to report your views or your opinion in such matter, because it's so dangerous when you put yourself. It's not about yourself. And we have seen this one. I think this is one of the advice you are giving to young journalists in Sudan and in the region where they face so many challenges about their security and safety. We tell them this one. The information, usually you get it from the people. Like in my experience, in 2016, I start looking at the situation in Sudan and to see what impact can you do to change or to make a small change in the journalism field and the journalism in Sudan. And we identify, we have done a research. That research, of course, is including audience to see the perspective of the audience in the current government in Sudan, news in Sudan, producing by local news or producing by international and regional media outlets. The most important things, when we figure out actually people rely on the information shared in the social media more than mainstream media, or they don't have the access to read the New York Times or the Washington Post, or even to read the local newspapers, which is published and written and produced in the capital and distribute to the very few cities around the capitals. In Sudan, we have televisions and radios and newspapers. The newspapers, maybe the government, they will control the company or the advertisement companies who has a big influence in the newspapers, what is written there. So what we did is we figured out these two things can make a difference. When you start using the methods and the tools that are available today, especially like alternate research and how to search in the internet and how to use the investigative tools to verify the information and to make the verifications like very easy for you and sometimes maybe fun, actually, it will help gathering the information and putting them together. So this is what we have done actually in Sudan in the last, from 2016, we hire a small team and we start gathering the information about the government, like every sectors. We have like 8 sectors in Sudan, from education to health, and we start putting this information together. We collected every document that is possible from the government. We went through these documents, we would line. So our goal here is to make it accessible to the journalists. The government does not.
This is the network that you're talking about, right? Sudanese,
no, I'm talking about a project that I'm doing now, actually.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah. So 2016, after we did the research, one of the recommendations, if we start focusing on 2 things. One is to train and to give the tools to the young journalists so that can become journalists with ethic, of course, is how to talk, how to verify the information, and how to conduct interviews with the people, which is another skills that we need to know. I think talking to the people, strangers or officials, is a skill. Don't think this is something coming random. This, I think, is very much need your skills, your attention, and you need to listen to the people because you don't know the information they're going to provide to you. This one thing. The other things, if we can work with a small team to collect information and data and to make it visual, accessible to every researcher or journalist, when you are writing a story, you can just go and click just one thing to search somewhere you can find the information. As I was mentioning, sometimes the government are blocking the information, not just because they don't need the public to know. Sometimes government, they don't have it. They don't care about getting the information. So even if you go to the government officials asking in specific information, maybe they will lie to you, maybe they will misguide you. But in our case in Sudan, we learned that most of the government institutions, actually, they don't have the information. They don't care to organize the information. They don't have a digital or electronic government. That you can even use the tools of the online research to gather the information from the government, because they don't keep it. They keep it in the papers like this one, just they keep it in some store. So, and we found out actually after the regime collapsed and we have a new regime, we found like rooms full of documents from the government, and we had to look at this document to see how the previous regime was corrupted, how they do the corruption, and who involved in this corruption, right? So I think these are 2 things. I will advise like everyone who is in such situations should just care about it, like how to get access to the information in your own, using your own way or resources, or talking to the people. Interviews, one of them. Talking to the people, one of them. But it's not necessarily like the high rank. You don't need to talk to the ministers. You need to talk to the lower rank, middle ranks. Maybe they have the information. And people, one of the things that we find out actually from this experience, people really love to talk, love to share. When you talk to them, when they realize that you are listening, you are paying attention, you are giving a value to what they're saying, they will talk. And you can imagine how much information you can get from them.
Surely. Thank you so much. And very, very important strategies that you mentioned, and particularly very critical, cautious message that you delivered. Surely we will evaluate the challenges out there, particularly reporting from conflicts and war zones, like both of you are underlining, do have serious threats. But once I attended a panel, and my fellow panelists said the best journalist is a live journalist. So that is very, very important to be cautious about the risks that we face, to make to evaluate our situation and do take care of our own well-being as well. So thank you so much on that quite important warning too. That would be great if we move forward to open the floor for questions and reflections from the audience, because very similar ones are posted on the discussion board here, and I would love if our colleagues in the room do share their questions and reflections as well. But that would be great. I have a couple that I see in the question board. Let's try to limit our responses so we get to address all the questions here. So I'll start with Daisy. If you're available to unmute yourself. And I guess the censorship, government censorships are very much covered by both Arif and Arbana. Maybe you could focus on your second question about citizen journalism. That'd be great. If you're available to unmute yourself, please go ahead. Daisy.
Okay, thank you so much. Daisy Ouma from Nairobi, Kenya. So I'll just go about the second question. Thank you, Arbana, for the first one. So my question was, what role does citizen journalism play in reporting from conflict? What are the advantages and drawbacks of this approach? Yeah, basically that was the question. Thank you.
Yes, a very important one. The role of citizen journalism. Is it making your job easier or more challenging?
Can you
Would you like to start?
I'm not hearing you very well. It's cutting
Sure.
off.
Sure, she already wrote it. I can read once for you. What role does citizen journalism play in reporting from conflict zones? And what are the advantages and drawbacks of this approach? Citizenship journalism being engaged in social media or dissemination of information.
Yeah, so it really depends from which country what we are talking about, whether there is civil war within your country. The way we have just to keep in mind that by gathering not reliable information about the armed conflict, the journalists carry out a crucial mission of public interest. So on the other side, often what journalists bring, the information that are bringing, they can go after the war criminals. So we have a huge responsibility. It depends from what kind of conflicts. If there is war that is between two countries, if there is a civil war within a country. So in our case, even now that Kosovo is not in war with Serbia, we still have conflict. And just recently, so just let me explain to you, even though in our territorial, even though it's within Kosovo, in northern part there are Serbs. So we were in war with Serbia and we still have conflict with Serbia. So journalists reporting going in northern part, they got attacked. Local journalists, also international journalists. The Serbs in that part, they attacked also KFOR NATO missions. They were in that part just recently happened few weeks ago. So are we going to be, as we've talked about, being objective? It is very hard, of course, because Serbia committed genocide and against Albanians. So how, even though the generation that they were not born during the war, it's hard because we are still experiencing consequences. And let me mention you one example. When I was editor-in-chief in the newspaper, we said, let's do an exchange program. Just send the Albanian journalist to Serbia and bring a Serb journalist to Kosovo. And the Serb journalist that came, she was surprised that she could speak Serbian in Pristina, in our capital city. And she said that all the propaganda, the media propaganda in Serbia about Kosovo feared her to come. And so she saw the different reality in Kosovo. So but on the other side, we have Albanian journalists, and when they go in northern part, they have to remove the license plate. They cannot tell that they are Albanians because they are going to be immediately attacked. So as I'm saying, that's why in certain situations, in certain conflicts, and now see what is happening with Israel and Palestine, and it's very, very, very difficult. That's why. And the safety issues and the responsibility that you have, especially during the war. There were international journalists that reported in Kosovo, and they raised the awareness, the awareness on what is happening, the genocide, the photos that they provided for the international. So sometimes, not sometimes, but we have a huge responsibility that we can change the reality, the facts that we bring. The condemnation that we might cause after our reporting. So that's why it's difficult, it's hard, but we have a huge responsibility, especially reporting on conflict zones and war and what the consequences that can be. As I said, Serbia committed genocide in Kosovo, and you have Serbs to this day that they believe in their propaganda. So it's very important on the way we report on certain conflicts.
Thank you so much. Arif, do you have any short reflections on this, the role of citizens being cautious? Please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think it's a great question, actually, because I agree with my colleague here. It depends on where you report from, and it depends on the situation, right? But also depends on the quality of the citizenship. Just to be honest, I'm not sure about these terms. How do you identify the citizen journalists? How can we make because some of them, we will never be able to verify the information they post in the social media or in the blogs or in the website or whatever. The difference between the professional journalism and citizen journalism, professional journalism has application to report the truth, and he has like a team, institution behind it, and this is the way how we will trust media outlets from the others, because I will think about it as a journalist. I will think when I see a report or a news coming in a website, I will start to wonder who is behind this website, how many people work here, what kind of methodology they have to verify the information they got, or they will just report whatever they got. So the difference between the professional journalism, we have this process before the story get out. Some 2, 3, 4 people maybe, they will go through this one. They will put input in the story. There is a way we do the verification across newsrooms. Doesn't matter in Europe or in the US or in Africa, we do the same way of verification. So the citizen could be very helpful if people start reporting from the places that we don't have access, or immediately don't have access to go. But in the same times could be very dangerous if we don't find a way to verify the information posted by the citizen journalists. So I would go with just be more careful about this concept of citizen journalists. We need people, because media are not everywhere and they can't cover everywhere. So we need people to rely on. I would suggest if this information coming from the citizen journalists to the media and then verification happen, and then before it was, I think it would be very helpful. Misinformation and false information more dangerous than non-information.
Yes, definitely.
Is that we don't know what is going on, is better than we know the false information, because that will guide us, will confuse the audience, and actually it has a huge impact on the truth and in the decision that they're going to
Thank you so much. And
Temre,
just like you said, so social media do come with both pluses and minuses too. So we definitely gotta be keeping an eye
Yeah,
on
and
that as well.
I would add that in this time that we live now, I
Mhm.
think journalism or journalists rely a lot on the social media, because there is a dozen of information there. It's just we need to know how to verify this information. Social
Yes.
media is a mine for information if you just get how to dive in the social media.
Yes, thank you so much. Arbana, very, very short wrap-up comments on
so
this.
sometimes, especially for investigative journalists, sometimes the citizenship, like we have people that might help us with sending videos, but then it's additional work. We have, as Arif said, we have to verify that. As a woman, I could not get into mosque when the imam was preaching in the radical way, but I have, if someone will send or post something from that time, it might help me gather the pieces of information. But again, I have to verify, because
Fill in the missing points.
exactly. So it's just being, and then it depends. Today we have all these propagandistic media that there are financed by certain groups, so we always have to know where we are getting the information. Also, as the readers who are, that's why it's very hard. You have to build credibility as a reporter, as a media, and it depends. You immediately know where you read the article if it's true or not. I know back home which media support which group and which media are independent.
Thank you so much. Moving on, I'll turn to Andrea from UK to have this question addressed, but it's a quite big thematic regional question, so that'd be great if we can concise it, and I would appreciate Arbana's short reflections on it as we have more coming along. Andrea, over to you. Are you available to unmute yourself? Join us, or shall I read your question? Andrea? All right, maybe.
Is this the question about Yugoslavia?
Yes, I would appreciate some reflection on that. Shall I read it out for you, or did you?
Want to read it for other to know what is the question?
Sure. She says she's wondering what you think about the rise of, nostalgia. I'm sorry for the mispronunciation, and the admiration towards Tito's regime. Do you think it might be holding back the democratic progression of countries like Serbia and Bosnia? And how do you think it affects Serbia's stranded relationship with Kosovo? But as I mentioned, I know this is a big question.
Yeah, so
but love to have your reflections.
Yeah, so many of you might know about Yugoslavia, but Albanians, even though during Yugoslavia and to Tito, they were not granted equal rights. So we were deprived for basic rights. In 1974, we were granted just a formal autonomy as a province. And then this was revoked in 1989. So, and then in early 90s, and what happened, so even though when other countries talk and they have nostalgic a period of time during Tito, not Albania. So they were not equal, and that's why we were always under control of Serbia. So that's why it was very easy after the death of Tito to start the repression against Albanians, and then the war happened, and during the early 90s. So everything, so it's not, we do not have nostalgic view at the time, because we were deprived for basic rights, and we were seen as a province with just a formal autonomy, which then was revoked. And after the war happened, and we gained our independence in 2008. So with the help of international, so whoever remembers during the 1999, the NATO intervention. So yeah, we do not have nostalgic views, because Serbia had the power against us, and we were under the brutal regime. So that's why during Tito, we didn't have the equal rights comparing to other states under Yugoslavia.
Thank you so much for this regional reflection. And I'll turn to Anna if she's available to unmute herself. But I see two questions that you posted, and I would really love if you could go with the one that you addressed to Arif. Are you available to join us, Anna? Or shall I read it?
Yeah, sure. Yes, so this question is going to be for Arif then. So I'm curious, what was the point when you decided to leave Sudan? And do you see the chance to go back anytime soon? And how do you see the future of media in the country?
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Okay, first of all, I was personally was based between Khartoum and Nairobi, actually, in the last maybe 15 years. So when I went back to Sudan, like 3 years after the regime change in Sudan, to establish my what we call the Sudan Facts Center for Journalism, that was 2 years ago, 3 years ago. And I didn't see it come to this way, like this war, despite that all the facts indicators that the country is going to critical point at some point. But everyone was surprised in the country, like the war, as if the war start from nowhere. But we always know that there is some indicators lead us to this point now. Question about possibility of going back to Sudan. There is a say that most of the conflict resolution experts will say that when conflict somewhere, and this conflict is more than 3 days, then it will get to the very complicated level. It will make the solution and the resolution so hard in anywhere in country, like in Sudan or anywhere. So we have seen this in Africa a lot, like when the war started and then the media started arriving and the mediation started this initiative, like what we need to bring the parties to the talk. And this, so if it's taking longer, then the conflict will get to a level that maybe it will be most likely for the international to understand this one. So back to your question again. I think it's very hard at this point to analyze the situation in Sudan if there is going to be a peace soon. But if that happens, if that scenario, if just the power of international mediators bring everyone to the table to start a negotiation, I think it will take a long time. And for the journalism, for the media, I think it will take longer because we already came from 30 years of the dictatorship regime in Sudan. It affected the media very, very deep. It affected the business behind it. It affected the quality. It affected the skills of the journalists, of course. And over that, also we had sanctions on Sudan from the US for a long time. That also affected the quality of the journalists that maybe you are hoping to rely on. As such time, like we're facing the country. But in my personal view, I think it will take longer than everyone thought, that maybe for the country to recover and to go back in feet again. And for the media, I think it will take longer. I don't see a sign of as soon as we sign the peace, the business will back and everyone will be back to the country. I think it will take longer than maybe we're expecting. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Just like you said, transition periods are long-term initiatives and does take time to move from a stage of conflict into stability and peace and security. Thank you so much on your reflections. The last question I'll take from Alex, and then we're gonna wrap it up.
Yes, thank you so much. I have a question to Arbana. For example, for me, like for a Russian person and independent journalists, if I write something good about Ukraine, like to support them, I can be arrested in Russia. And I think that in Ukraine is the same. what about Kosovo? For example, you like Kosovan journalist, if you write article with the critics of Kosovo, can you be arrested or no? Just what do you have with these limits?
Yeah,
for
it's
journalists?
just it's different thing because you are a Russian and you are basically this question could be addressed to, for example, if a Serbian journalist, because Serbia committed a genocide against Kosovo, if a Serbian journalist will write something positively for Kosovo, yes, because there is authoritarian regime in Serbia, the media is under totally control of the state, so there is no independence. There are some human rights activists. There is this woman, Natasha Kandic, who raised her voice about the genocide that happened in Kosovo. Yes, there are some names, but media, no, because they are going to face consequences. So your position is as asked for a Serb journalist. If a Serb journalist will write a positive article for Kosovo, because Russia is committing genocide and a war in Ukraine. So Serb committed war in Kosovo. So that's why I took that example of that journalist that came from Serbia. It's like a journalist from Russia to go to Ukraine and see completely different situation, because the propagandistic media and still media in Serbia, they refer to Kosovo as a part of Serbia, even though we are independent. We have our flag. We've been recognized to over 100 countries, from United States, UK, France. So, but still in Serbia, there are media and journalists that refer to us as a part of Serbia, which is done. We are not a part of Serbia anymore. So yes, someone from Serbia would have consequences, not, I don't know if arrested, but consequences if they write something positively about Kosovo.
Yeah, but I just asked about journalists in Kosovo. I understand about Serbian journalists, but what about journalists in Kosovo if they write something good about Serbia?
Yeah, but there is the Kosovo, Serb, the Albanians, they write about the conflict. So there is nothing to be right good about Serbia, because we as a journalist, even within our territorial, within Kosovo, we cannot go in the parts where there are Serbs, because we are going to be attacked. So no, Kosovo will not arrest journalists, because I haven't seen any article of Kosovo. You cannot find a Ukrainian journalist that will write something good for Russia, for Putin, right? Because the genocide the Russia is committed to. So we cannot ask from a victim country to write something good from the regime, because this cannot happen.
I mean, for example,
yeah, we write, as I've mentioned, Natasha Kandic, because she is Serb in Belgrade, that we do praise her about she's supporting us. But in Kosovo, if we write something within, if you're asking if a journalist in Kosovo are arrested during Serbia regime, when we had Serbian forces, police and military, yes, Albanians were arrested. Now, let me give you an example, my personal case. My country's police, and they didn't support me even though I was brutally attacked. So you are not safe, and the attacks come from different ways. I was sued from the business that was linked with the main political party that was in the government. So of course they're gonna find the ways to send you to jail. Same in my case. It was not officially the government that asked or sent me to court. There was this businessman who was linked with political party, and he sued me, and in 5 days I was invited to court. So it's a huge difference. But yes, journalists are not safe in Kosovo. Even not just me, many of my articles, they were brutally attacked, and the state really never find out or did anything. In my case, when I find out who was the prosecutor to deal with my case, you know who they choose to deal with my case? A prosecutor that just until then was dealing with traffic tickets. And they choose purposely this prosecutor to not find out who attacked me and what happened. So it is not safe. It's not, as I said, we cannot take an example, Russia, because we know what Putin is doing. And I have met many journalists that have escaped. And I just written a couple of the last week about how international organizations should support Russian independent journalists that are writing outside Russia also, because they are everywhere not safe, because we know how it works. They need support. They need to be granted asylum in Western countries, because a lot of journalists are not provided with visa, are not provided with asylum in Western countries. So it's what we need is international support, because many journalists escape from conflict because they are not going to be able to write in Moscow. Something, it's if they go to Poland is different, but still they need support. And unfortunately, even now if a conflict starts, like we have seen what happened last year with Ukraine, everyone was talking and reporting. But today we have less and less articles on what is happening right there. So immediately a different conflict and a different war would get the attention of the media. But in general, even just a couple of days ago, I gave an interview about the process of asylum in the United States. There is this activist, human rights activist from Yemen. She was writing and she was trying to convince young boy to get out from Al-Qaeda and ISIS. And she is still in the process of asylum for many, many years. So journalists struggle in their country, but also struggle when they leave in other countries, and they do not have support that they were supposed to have.
Particularly with the rise of transnational crimes, we do see more journalists in exile being attacked, being challenged by various barriers. Well, thank you so much, Arbana, for your response. And closing the session, I would love to read a couple of the comments that we have in the chat. Daisy says, Arbana and Arif, your thoughtful responses provided valuable information and shed light on the question. I found your perspective to be incredibly enlightened and deepened my understanding. Your contribution have made a significant impact, and I'm certain that many others found insights just as valuable as I did. Thank you so much, she says. Remedy from Nigeria says, excellent session. Thank you so much. From Peru, Rosa Kebia says, thank you so much for your sharing. Zamir from India, thank you all for a highly informative session. And Anna just notes that she thanks you as well for a fantastic session. I have learned so much about your countries and journeys as journalists. I wish you strength and success for your investigations. From Nigeria, thank you for today's lesson. Canada, Fiona says, thank you. Thank you so much, everybody, for your active participation. These series of webinars are valuable, productive, as we have your insights on board, as well as the certificate program that we create for this wonderful, meaningful interaction between our expert speakers and you on board. So Arbana, Arif, thank you so much. We have covered many agenda items, how state-led corruptions are increasingly disseminating within the society for their own political agenda disseminations, or twisting religious cultural norms in the society to make us more polarized even further, going along transitional periods. We talked about countering violent extremism through media, independent reporting. Arif reflected on controlling public narrative as embraced by autocratic leaders, one-man regimes, and the impact of media to combat these state-led challenges. So thank you so much to both of you. And I would love to have any last remarks, any takeaways that you would love to share with our audience. last goodbyes. Arbana?
Yeah, so I just texted whoever has any additional question or they need anything for any process, please contact me. You have my email I've just shared with all of you. It's my first last name 36 at Gmail. So I have, since I've been doing this job for many years now, I have connection at the international organization that support journalists. If you really need something, I know how important it is when you are in your country and when you have a support from an international country and an organization, it's very important for you. I know how hard it is to write as a local, and your bravery, you cannot just, you are so brave, and coming journalists from different country is much easier to come and report from your own countries, because they are more safe. They are not get attacked as you got attacked. So whatever you need, please email me at this email.
Thank you so much. Arif?
Yeah, I would just thank you so much again. This was very helpful even for me to reflect so many thoughts and thinking about what is going on in journalism. Just one thing to say that actually, maybe one day all of us will realize how the world depends on our work. Like I think, I truly believe that journalists have been doing a fantastic job to provide information to the people who are very much needed. And if we just think about it like that, I think we keep, despite all the challenges facing us in different countries and different type of challenges, but I think our work is making the world better, actually. Thank you so much, and keep doing the amazing work.
Thank you. Thank you. Mehmet, any last comments from
and,
your side?
and also, please feel free to share my email, my contact with everyone. I have seen so many incredible journalists here, and I hope to see you in the future very soon, or to meet somewhere, doing some more. Yeah, thank you so much again.
Mehmet, would you like to share?
Yes, I want to thank Arif and Arbana for sharing your wonderful journalism career and experiences with us. This has been phenomenal information that you shared with us, and we know and believe that journalists are, change makers in society. You're building public opinion, and you are tackling with misinformation and disinformation for public good. So thank you so much for doing this. And we hope to see you guys, our participants. Thank you so much for your, active participation with your questions, comments on Thursday at 10 a.m. again. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Have a lovely day. We're going to see you all this Thursday. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.